chosen ones. The worst mistake anyone can make is to misjudge a diamond for a rock. It'll shine anyway, but not in their hands. Here's a cold, hard fact. 80% of people regret losing someone who was good for them, but by the time they realize it, it's already too late. They fumbled, and not just any fumble, they fumbled you. The kind of rare one-in-a-million energy that doesn't just walk into someone's life twice. Let's be honest, you weren't just another person in their story. You were the plot twist, the secret weapon, the winning lottery ticket they casually tossed into the trash. But don't worry, their loss is about to be your glow-up. And oh, it's going to sting. Stick around, because we're about to dive into exactly why fumbling you will go down as the biggest mistake of their life. Trust me, by the end of this, even you will laugh at how badly they dropped the ball. And by laugh, I mean glow so hard, their regrets will need sunglasses. Number 1, they fumbled their access to visionary insight. You were their access to something rare, a mind that doesn't just think inside or outside the box, but operates in a whole new dimension. Your vision allowed you to see opportunities, solutions, and pathways that most people wouldn't even notice if they were staring right at them. That kind of insight isn't just useful, it's transformative. When you came into their life, you weren't just bringing your presence, you were offering a perspective that could have elevated them, their ideas, and their entire way of being. But here's the kicker, they didn't see it. Or worse, they did see it and underestimated its value. They let ego, insecurity, or plain old short-sightedness convince them that they could do just fine without you. What they didn't realize is that being around someone like you isn't just about the moments you share. It's about the doors you quietly open, the wisdom you silently drop, and the way your energy forces the people around you to level up. Now without you, they're stuck. They'll try to mimic the spark you brought, but it won't work. It's like trying to force a puzzle piece into the wrong spot. It'll never fit. Meanwhile, you'll keep moving forward, fueled by the same vision they were too blind to appreciate. The irony. One day they'll look back and realize you weren't just valuable, you were the value. The ideas they dismissed, the insights they ignored, those were their golden tickets, and they tossed them aside. That's a mistake they'll feel in every mediocre decision they make from now on, because people like you don't just come around often. You're the rarity that changes lives, and they'll spend the rest of theirs realizing they fumbled the one shot they had. Number 2, you were their mirror, and they shattered it. You weren't just someone they crossed paths with. You were a mirror. Not the kind that shows people what they want to see, but the kind that reflects the truth, their strengths, their potential, and yes, their weaknesses. That's not easy for most people to face. Being around you meant they couldn't hide behind illusions or excuses anymore, and for some, that kind of honesty feels threatening. Instead of rising to the challenge, they chose the easy way out. They shattered the mirror. What they didn't realize is that the reflection you provided wasn't meant to shame them. It was an opportunity. You saw what they were capable of before they even did. You were willing to stand beside them, to support and push them toward their best version. But they weren't ready. They mistook the discomfort of self-awareness for something negative, not understanding that growth always feels uncomfortable at first. By rejecting you, they didn't just lose someone who cared enough to see their potential, they lost the chance to evolve. Now, they're stuck with the same distorted version of themselves, the one they were too scared to change. And here's the irony. The very things they criticized or overlooked in you were often the qualities they needed most. While you move forward, growing and refining yourself, they'll remain where you left them, haunted by the realization that you weren't trying to tear them down, you were trying to lift them up. That's the cruel twist. They didn't lose you because you weren't good enough. They lost you because they couldn't handle seeing the truth about themselves. And now, they're left with a cracked, incomplete picture of what could have been if only they'd had the courage to look in the mirror and see. Number 3. They rejected the unseen force that could have changed everything. You weren't just a person in their life, you were a force. Something unexplainable, intangible, but undeniably powerful. Your presence wasn't just felt, it changed things. The way you thought, moved and acted had this quiet way of shifting the energy around you. You weren't loud about it, but your influence ran deep. You made people think differently, feel differently, and even want more for themselves. That's not something you can replace, and it's definitely not something you can take for granted. But they did. They underestimated how much of their progress, their inspiration, or even their sanity was tied to having you around. Maybe they thought it was all them, that their success, their ideas, or their peace of mind was self-made. What they didn't see was the role you played in shaping their reality, the subtle ways your presence acted like a guiding hand, even when you weren't trying. They mistook the results for coincidence, not realizing that you were the unseen force behind it all. Now that you're gone, they'll feel it. Not immediately. People like that rarely do. But over time, things will start to unravel. The clarity they once had will become clouded. The confidence they felt will waver, and the spark they thought was theirs will start to fade. They'll try to figure out what changed, but the answer will always lead back to you. You were the difference. And here's the real tragedy. They didn't just lose someone who was good for them, they lost someone who was good for everything around them. You were their secret weapon, their unseen advantage. Without you, they're just another player in the game. With you, they could have been unstoppable. Too bad they didn't see it until it was too late. Number 4. They'll be haunted by what if. Regret is a slow, creeping weight. It doesn't hit all at once. It waits, letting time do its work. At first, they might not even notice. Life moves on, distractions pile up, and they convince themselves they made the right choice. But then something shifts. Maybe it's a moment of failure, a stagnation, or the absence of the energy and inspiration you once brought into their life. That's when the question begins to form. Quietly at first. What if? As time goes on, that question grows louder. It follows them into the quiet moments, the late-night thoughts, and the spaces where they can no longer distract themselves. They'll start to replay their decision over and over, picking apart the details, trying to justify why they let you go. But no matter how many scenarios they run through, the answer always feels hollow. Deep down, they know the truth. Losing you wasn't just a mistake, it was the mistake. Every success they don't achieve, every opportunity that feels just out of reach, every person who fails to measure up, will remind them of what they lost. It's not just about the role you played in their life, it's about the version of themselves they could have become with you by their side. That potential will haunt them. The worst part? Regret doesn't come with closure. They'll never get to know how their life might have unfolded if they'd chosen differently. That what if will become an endless loop, a question they'll carry for years, if not a lifetime. And the truth is, while they're stuck replaying the past, you'll be moving forward, thriving, growing, and building a future they'll only ever be able to imagine. Number 5. They underestimated the ripple effect of your absence. When they let you go, they thought the loss would be contained, like removing one piece from a puzzle and expecting the rest to stay intact. What they didn't realize is that your presence wasn't isolated. It rippled through their life in ways they couldn't see. You weren't just someone who showed up and filled a role. You were the thread quietly holding everything together. Your energy had a way of spilling over into everything. The ideas you sparked, the support you offered, the solutions you subtly provided. They weren't confined to one area. They touched their work, their relationships, even their mental and emotional state. You brought clarity to chaos, momentum to stagnation, and perspective to problems they couldn't solve alone. The kicker: they didn't notice it because you made it look effortless. Now that you're gone, the void isn't just where you once stood, it's spreading. The small ways you held things together are unraveling. Those little things you did that they never appreciated are glaringly absent. Their confidence is shaky, their decisions less sure, and the opportunities they once took for granted are slipping through their fingers. What they thought would be a small shift is becoming a tidal wave of consequences. The irony is brutal. They'll only begin to understand your value when the ripple effects of your absence grow too big to ignore. By the time they realize how interconnected everything was, it'll be too late. While they scramble to fix the chaos, you'll be far ahead, creating new ripples in a life that appreciates your worth. They thought they could move on without you, but they underestimated the sheer impact of someone like you, a force that doesn't just exist, but transforms everything it touches. Number 6. They exposed their insecurity, not your flaws. When they dismissed you, it wasn't about anything you lacked. The problem was never you. It was them. They were faced with the undeniable intensity of your presence, your ambition, your energy, and it was too much for them to handle. Instead of being inspired by your light, they felt threatened by it. It exposed their insecurities, their fears, and the gaps in their own character that they weren't ready to confront. Being around you forced them to look at themselves in ways they weren't prepared for. Your strength highlighted their weaknesses, your confidence revealed their self-doubt, and your drive made their complacency impossible to ignore. That kind of exposure is uncomfortable, and not everyone has the courage to face it. Rather than stepping up to meet your level, they chose the easier route, pushing you away and convincing themselves it was your fault. The truth is, they weren't equipped for someone of your caliber. You weren't just another person in their life. You were a challenge, a chance to grow, evolve, and rise to something greater. But growth requires effort, and effort requires bravery. They didn't have it. Instead of embracing the opportunity you represented, they ran from it, mistaking their own inadequacy for flaws in you. In doing so, they revealed far more about themselves than they ever could about you. Their decision wasn't about your worth, but their own limitations. And the most ironic part, while they retreated into their comfort zone, you kept shining, proving that their rejection wasn't a reflection of your flaws. It was a spotlight on their inability to handle your greatness. They didn't leave you behind, they left themselves behind, and that's a truth they'll carry long after you've moved on. Number 7. They lost an ally, gained a lesson. You weren't just someone in their life, you were their ally, a silent yet powerful force that stood by them, lifted them, and amplified their potential. An ally like you isn't just a friend or partner. You're the kind of person who brings strategy to chaos, strength to weakness, and vision to uncertainty. You were the one who saw their battles coming before they did, who offered solutions they didn't even know they needed. And the best part? You did it effortlessly, without making a show of it. But they didn't value that. They mistook your presence for something replaceable, assuming they could carry on just fine without you. What they didn't realize is that you weren't just helping them win battles, you were preventing wars. The situations you de-escalated, the conflicts you solved, the opportunities you created, those weren't accidents. Those were the ripple effects of having you on their side. Now, without you, they're exposed. The battles they were never prepared to fight are catching up to them, and the victories they once took for granted feel impossible to achieve. Every time they struggle, every time they hit a wall, they'll remember how easy things felt with you around, and it'll sting, because deep down they'll know you weren't just a convenience. You were their advantage, the lesson they've learned. Some allies are irreplaceable. You weren't just standing beside them. You were helping carry the weight they didn't even know was there. And now, as you move forward, stronger and more focused, they're left to fight alone, grappling with the harsh reality of what they lost. Losing you wasn't just a setback. It was the moment they traded security for uncertainty, and they'll feel the impact of that choice every step of the way. Number 8. They chose comfort over growth. When they let you go, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because you were too much. Too much drive, too much depth, too much truth. For someone who preferred the shallow end of life, they chose comfort over growth. An easy choice for people who fear the challenges that come with real transformation. Growth demands effort, discomfort, and sometimes even pain. You were all of that, a mirror that demanded they level up, and they just weren't ready to face it. They opted for what was familiar, even if it meant staying stagnant. You see, some people are more afraid of change than failure. They'd rather stay in a mediocre situation where they feel safe than take a risk that could elevate them. And you weren't going to let them coast. You were a force for growth, a disruptor of their status quo, and they weren't willing to rise to that. Now they're stuck by fumbling you. They sealed themselves in their current reality, a loop of the same habits, the same mindset, and the same results. Meanwhile, you're moving forward, stepping into bigger challenges and greater rewards. You're doing the hard work, taking the risks, and growing into a version of yourself that they'll only get to watch from a distance. The irony is, they'll start to see your success and wonder why their own life hasn't taken off. They'll blame circumstances, timing, or luck, never admitting that the real reason is that they rejected the very person who could have inspired them to grow. While you ascend, they'll remain exactly where they are, comforted by their stagnation, yet haunted by what they could have become if only they'd had the courage to choose growth over ease. Number 9. You were the spark they couldn't handle. You weren't just someone who walked into their life, you were the spark that could have ignited a blaze. Your energy wasn't just vibrant, it was intense. Your vision wasn't just clear, it was razor-sharp. And your drive wasn't just steady, it was relentless. You didn't just live life, you demanded it. You met people where you stood, challenging the world around you to rise to your level. That kind of fire isn't easy to handle, and most people would rather avoid it than face it head-on. They saw your brilliance, your unshakable purpose, and your unwavering belief in your own potential. But instead of stepping up to match your energy, they stepped back. They couldn't keep up. It wasn't that they didn't want to. Deep down, they probably did. But your fire was too much for them to control. It was threatening to their fragile sense of self, exposing their own lack of ambition or direction. They thought they could either dim your light or walk away, hoping the intensity would fade. The truth is, they simply weren't ready for someone like you. You were too much of a challenge, too much of a catalyst for change, and they weren't equipped to handle the heat. They saw your strength as something to fear, not as an opportunity to rise with you. Instead of growing into the person who could stand alongside you, they chose to shrink away, unable or unwilling to meet the level of passion and purpose you embodied. And here's the harsh reality. While they're stuck avoiding the fire, you'll keep burning brighter. Your light isn't for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. Those who can't handle your flame don't deserve to walk beside you anyway. You were never meant to dim yourself for anyone, and while they watch from the sidelines, they'll realize they missed their chance to rise with you. Number 10. You'll become the standard they'll never meet again. By letting you go, they unknowingly set a standard they'll never be able to meet again. You weren't just another person in their life. You were the benchmark, the gold standard for what greatness looks like in relationships, opportunities, and experiences. You brought a combination of energy, depth, and potential that others just won't measure up to. And while they might try to move on and convince themselves otherwise, deep down, they'll always compare everything to you. At first, they'll brush it off. They'll convince themselves that the next person, the next chance, the next experience will be just as good, if not better. But as time passes, the realization will hit harder than any rejection. Nothing feels the same. No one else brings the same spark, the same balance of challenge and support, the same understanding of what it takes to truly connect and grow. They might try to ignore it or pretend they're fine, but subconsciously they'll always measure every new person against you. The problem is, no one else will measure up. They'll catch themselves reminiscing, comparing the excitement, the chemistry, the way you made them feel, always falling short. They'll chase that feeling, but it'll be a never-ending pursuit. And the most crushing part? They'll never admit it to themselves or to anyone else. But the truth will linger, a quiet undercurrent of dissatisfaction in every new relationship and every new opportunity. They thought they could do better, but in fumbling you, they set the bar so high that nothing will ever come close. You've become a shadow they'll always try to outrun, but will never escape. Number 11. Their comfort zone just became a trap. Losing you didn't just set them back, it locked them in a cage of their own making. You were the force that pushed them out of their comfort zone, challenging them to do better, to be better. Without you, that zone, the one they once saw as safe and secure, will start to feel more like a trap. They'll convince themselves they're okay, that everything's stable, but deep down, they'll feel the walls closing in. What once felt like security will start to feel like stagnation. You were the catalyst for their growth. Every time they hesitated, you pushed them forward. Every time they got too comfortable, you challenged them to rise. But now, they'll have no one to keep them on their toes. They'll sink deeper into that familiar rut, mistaking the ease of their daily life for progress. But comfort is not the same as success. And without you around to remind them of that, they'll become more complacent, more fearful of change. They'll tell themselves that things are fine, but the truth is, they're stuck. Meanwhile, you'll keep moving, embracing discomfort and thriving in spaces that require you to grow. You'll soar to new heights, exploring opportunities they'd never have the courage to chase. And as they remain frozen in their comfort zone, you'll be free. Free to evolve, free to rise, and free to create a life that is constantly expanding. While they remain trapped in the illusion of stability, they thought they could keep everything the same. But in losing you, they lost the one thing that could have pushed them to something greater. Now, they're stuck in the very place they thought was safe, trapped, while you're out there living a life they'll only wish they had the guts to live. Number 12. Your glow-up will be their silent punishment. The greatest revenge isn't petty payback, it's evolution. It's thriving when they expected you to stumble, it's leveling up when they thought you'd plateau. While they're stuck replaying their choices, wondering what went wrong, you'll be out there living the life they never thought you could achieve. As you grow, rise and shine, they'll be forced to watch from the sidelines, helpless. The success you accumulate will be a loud reminder of what they let slip away, a punishment they'll never be able to ignore. They'll see your glow-up, your transformation, your ascent to places they thought were beyond you. And with every new accomplishment, every milestone you hit, they'll feel the sting of their decision. It won't be obvious, it won't be immediate, but it will be undeniable. The harsh truth is that they once had a front-row seat to your potential and chose to walk away. They thought they could find better, that they could keep moving forward without you. But what they didn't realize is that you were the best part of the show. Your success will be the loudest silence they'll ever hear. Every time you step into a new level of greatness, they'll feel the weight of their choice. they'll wish they could go back and fix it, but they can't. While you flourish, they'll remain in the shadow of their own regret, watching you succeed in ways they never imagined, knowing full well they were the ones who chose to turn their back when the opportunity to be part of your journey was right in front of them. In the end, the truth is clear. They made a choice, and that choice will echo in the gaps where you used to be. They underestimated your value, mistook your brilliance for a challenge they couldn't meet, and let their own insecurities dictate their actions. But as you continue to grow, thrive, and evolve, you'll prove that your worth was never tied to their validation. Your success, your journey, your glow-up will be a constant reminder of what they walked away from, an irreplaceable force that they'll never find again. The path they've chosen won't be as fulfilling as they hope. Without you, they'll face a reality where the same challenges, the same limitations, and the same regrets will follow them. Meanwhile, you'll keep rising, unburdened by the past and free to create a future that's uniquely yours. And when they look back, when the weight of their decision finally hits them, they'll realize that what they lost wasn't just a person. It was the opportunity to grow, to thrive, and to stand beside someone who could have helped them reach heights they never dreamed possible. Your journey is yours to own, and as you ascend to greater things, remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't even about them. It's about you proving that you're better, stronger, and more capable than anyone ever imagined. Keep shining, because the world will take notice, and they'll be left to watch from the sidelines, silently haunted by the what-ifs that will never go away. If this resonated with you, if you felt the power in these words, and know deep down that you're on the verge of something bigger, then hit that subscribe button. Join a community that's all about growth, empowerment, and unlocking the potential you know you have. Don't miss out on the next level of wisdom, motivation, and inspiration that's coming your way. This is just the beginning. Let's continue to rise together. Subscribe now and keep shining, because your journey is about to get even brighter.